And then the third option for regional corridors that we see as part of our vision for the future is the idea of connecting other places throughout the region with express coach service. And before you dismiss the idea of hopping on a bus to get into work, consider the luxuries associated with express coaches. We're talking premium amenities, TVs, Wi-Fi, restrooms, leather seats. And the reason why it's not necessary in these corridors to put these buses in grade-separated dedicated lanes or put them on rails is they're just simply not competing with the same kind of traffic that those corridors that would warrant those larger investments would require. But I would argue that express coach service is very ideal for many parts of our region. It's certainly not settling. And if you look back at the Denver region today, they've chosen to implement express coach service on two of their most important corridors, connecting downtown Denver and the airport and Boulder to downtown Denver and the airport. But those regional corridors aren't enough to fulfill our vision for mass transit and ultimately walkable communities and a multimodal transportation system. If we're going to invest in regional corridors, we also have to invest in local circulators to get people from those communities to the stations in their areas. This is an example of a local circulator out in Denver that connects people from that express coach service between Denver and Boulder. This little circulator connects to that line at a park and ride lot and then circulates people through the community, hitting a major shopping center on the way. This makes ultimately transit much more convenient for people than having to either walk long distances or get in their car to drive to a station. And then beyond those local circulator systems that we see as part of our vision, we need to continue to expand and support urban fixed route services all across our region. And this really starts with shoring up our support for agencies like the Nashville MTA, the Regional Transportation Authority, Clarksville Transit System, the Rover down in Murfreesboro, the Franklin Transit Authority, and the TDOT provides fixed route services in Middle Tennessee as well as Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency. There's a host of folks that already provide very good services. It's important that we support their efforts. One of the things that is very difficult for them to do in terms of expanding their service to the public is the lack of knowing what funding might come their way the following year. So we need to make sure that we're there to commit dedicated funding to public transportation to make sure these lines become permanent and available to the private sector to respond to with equal investment. But as we talk about expanding local bus service throughout the region, we're not only talking about increasing the frequency of buses, but we're talking about making them more comfortable, more convenient, safe, and reliable for customers. And I can't think of a better project to accomplish those goals than the recently finished Music City Central in downtown Nashville that has, taken passengers off Dedrick Street, waiting in all types of weather and inside to a climate-controlled building and have treated them like customers instead of transit-dependent people. Another investment that MTAs began pursuing that we see important to continue support for is the implementation of bus rapid transit service throughout the Davidson County and the region. These are a couple of recent shots of bus rapid transit being implemented along Gallatin Road between Nashville and the Rivergate-Goodlettsville area. You see there a new shelter that will ultimately have technology in place to show you the time of the next bus, and then a premium vehicle that provides a more comfortable experience. And then beyond local bus service in the urban areas, we see a return to urban streetcar. And when we look across the nation to see what other parts of the country are doing with respect to streetcars, it's pretty impressive. A lot of regions are beginning to look at reinvigorating their urban centers with streetcar. And there's no wonder, when you look at these 5 examples here, you see the initial cost in millions to implement those lines, and the economic development returns as a result of that investment ranging from 571% all the way up to 3,774%. This isn't to say that streetcar alone is going to make you rich, but it is proven to attract more private economic development than just widening a roadway or doing the bare minimum to support your transportation infrastructure. So streetcar becomes a tool to begin shaping future growth so that we're not sprawling out, consuming the prime ag land that we cherish so well throughout Middle Tennessee. And when we look at ourselves, we recognize there's a pretty good history here in our region with streetcar. This is a map of the old Nashville urban streetcar system that once existed. They started out being pulled by mules, then were electrified. They're great vehicles, pretty good experience. This is Streetcar, not that I know firsthand, but this is a Streetcar down West End. And that existed until, pretty much one day we decided that, they weren't welcome anymore. So we decided to rip out the rails or pave over them. Interesting now that we're looking to go back to those routes. So what I have for you today is a request to imagine what Streetcar might look like on West End once again. And so here's a map showing downtown, its proximity to Vanderbilt University and Centennial Park, and a hypothetical route that might exist if we all get behind it, right? So the route for Streetcar in downtown out towards West End, might initially start out going in that direction all the way out to, say, 440, ultimately down to White Bridge Road, St. Thomas Hospital, and then come back in the same way, and maybe scooting over on 21st down Broadway and then all the way back into downtown Nashville. And I recognize if you don't spend a whole lot of time in downtown Nashville, you might not recognize the route. So let me show you a couple of pictures of what it could look like if we were to pursue Streetcar in downtown Nashville. So the first thing I'm going to show you is Riverfront Station today, and then what Riverfront Station could look like with Streetcar servicing the commuter rail stop. This is 4th and Broadway today, and you can see the MTA's new circulator in the background coming at you in the picture, and one of their local buses going west on Broadway. Begin to see how that could phase in over time to be Streetcar for that main line down Broadway. And then even in the future, get creative and put that circulator on Streetcar too. I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit more what that might look like. And incidentally, there's that medical mart over there, and I would guess that about 50% of those 150,000 people that Commissioner Kisber talked about being in town every year as a result of that might take public transportation. This is a look at what Streetcar might look like at Broadway and West End at that split there. This is the existing condition. This is what it might look like. Of course, the Streetcar does not physically construct buildings, but you get the idea. They are related. This is Streetcar at West End and Acklen Park. This is Streetcar at Broadway and 21st, where it might kind of pivot around from West End to go back down Broadway into Riverfront Station. So that's a look at some of the urban fixed route services that we envision as part of our vision for 2035. And then beyond those urban fixed route services, it's also important to understand that part of this vision is continued support for the park and rides and the Vanpool services and the rural paratransit services that are provided across Middle Tennessee. Those are critical to people that can't get around without their cars due to whatever situation they're in. But they're also the most wise investment for places that don't have the density to support a local bus service. Our Vanpool program in Middle Tennessee is one of the most popular in the country. And it just makes sense for people to meet at a park and ride lot and share the ride into downtown Nashville or Cool Springs or Indian Lake, or I'm going to get in trouble because I'm not going to mention every county. But you get the idea. It's more financially feasible and more appropriate in many cases throughout the region to be investing in these types of solutions instead of trying to build streetcar or light rail or bus rapid transit everywhere. Just a couple of examples of what we mean when we say paratransit and vanpools. So that's a look at, a quick look at our bold new vision for mass transit, which isn't our vision alone. This is a vision that's been shaped over many years. It's a result of many studies that have taken place over the last decade or so. There's been a tremendous amount of input over the past year since this last summit to help shape the suggestions offered by this vision for mass transit. But it's only one of 3 policy initiatives that the NPO mayors are pursuing. The second policy initiative is that we need to support active transportation modes and build walkable communities.